everyone's week? Mine was good. Happy Father's Day, everyone. Very special episode coming up. What a beautiful day it was in Sydney. We're about to find out about Sicily and Paris. Hi, Justine.
Hi.
I'm going to ask Antonio Gambale to come on. Wonderful composer.
Hi.
Hey! Our very own Eddie Bronson. Everyone at home, write some beautiful things.
I really hope my neighbor, Mr. Cohen, can hear this. Would love it.
Bravo, 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 Eddie. Whoa. Welcome to this very special cinematic episode of Synchronicity, coming to you live from Sydney, Paris, and I've just found out Sicily. Is that right, Justine?
That's right. I'm in Sicily today.
That was the wonderful Eddie Bronson playing an overture of music from, of course, the films of Federico Fellini, composed by the one and only Nino Rota. Eddie? Amarcord, 8.5. La Dolce Vita. Oy, oy, oy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is one I've really looked forward to. It's time to eat some humble strudel. That's right. Time to wipe the schmutz off your crisp Shabbos shirt. Time to bring back Schmelvis from the dead. Time to throw off your streimels because we've graduated to the next level, ladies and gentlemen. Live this evening from Sydney and this morning from Paris and Sicily, we welcome two, not one, but two Emmy Award nominees, two incredible talents that we're so proud of here in Australia. And we're not talking the Logies. Nah. We're not talking Nobel Prizes. No, we're talking Emmys for, of course, their work on Unorthodox, the polarizing series that tells the story of Esty running away from her life in Williamsburg off to Berlin. Now, on behalf of all of those Netflix addicts, all of those culture seekers, lovers, and dreamers, all of those stuck in isolation, all of us in our colorful, vibrant community from the online beating heart from Dunera, please welcome composer Antonio Gambale and costume designer Justine Seymour.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Good morning, you
Great
two.
to be here.
Antonio, you've got a coffee?
I do. I have a very strong coffee right in front of me.
How do you take your coffee?
Just black as it comes.
Black like your soul.
That's right.
And over there, what's the fashionable drink right now in Sicily, Justine? As in right now?
I don't know. I've only been here for a few days, but of course I've had a lovely coffee already this morning, and I had a lovely dinner party last night where we drank copious amounts of white and red wine.
Where are you in Sicily, Justine?
Oh, don't ask complicated questions. I don't know. Somewhere beautiful.
You don't even know the name of the town. Wow. That's really hot.
I do. It's like Rangiera or something like that. It's up on a hill. It's beautiful.
I'll just mention to everyone at home, whether you're in Melbourne, Sydney, the US, Europe, I don't know where you are, always keep us interested in the chat. You know, just write in there. It makes us feel good. If you've got any questions along the way, just please put in your questions and we might get to them. Hopefully we do. But so if everyone would just thank Eddie now just for playing that wonderful little overture, that would be wonderful. Just a couple of people.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you. Beautiful.
Yes, thanks, Eddie. Beautiful. Here they come. Here they come. See, everyone's here. So look, music and costume. Let's just throw ourselves just quickly into Unorthodox. Music and costume, you could say, hold kind of similar purposes, or there's definite similarities in the intention of both the costume and the music. One of which I guess would be able to link the two worlds. There's juxtaposition in it. So when you look at the trailer, for example, of Unorthodox, there's music of all types in there, and it's of course Antonio's music that threads the two worlds together. Similarly, I guess, Justine, there are two very opposing worlds there that are linked through costume. I mean, when did you guys find out you were actually working together on this?
After.
Couple weeks ago.
After that, because you were at film school together, right?
In the same
Yeah,
year.
and we had no idea. We were in the same year, and of course you and I were in the same year as well, Ilan, but I think you guys only did 1 year each. I did 2 years. And it was actually, I think it was Melinda Doring who alerted us to the fact that we were both alumni. Was that right, Antonio?
I think I figured it out because I saw you mentioned somewhere that you were an AFTRS alumni. I was like thinking, oh, Justine. And then I looked you up and realized you're in the same year, because we don't work at the same time, as you can imagine. I mean, you would know this. Costume design, it's all very much in pre and in production. They're using it from the shoot. And music, even though on Unorthodox I did work much earlier than normally on a film or series, I wasn't going to the shoot. I wasn't anywhere near that. So our paths don't cross. So
now, everyone at home who's wondering what AFTRS is the Australian Film, Television and Radio, the Australian Film, Television, Radio School. And we all went there. We all just happened to go there. And what we're getting to now is the fact that Antonio and Justine figured out that they were in the same year of AFTRS, only after the fact. So it's hilarious. It's hilarious. And look, how does it feel to be like celebrated your work on such a high level at the Emmys? You for 2, Antonio, and Justine only 1, but yeah, awesome.
Well, it feels amazing. I mean, it's just so wonderful that this story has resonated with so many people around the world, and it's really taken off so wonderfully. And I've had such incredible feedback about the wardrobe and how people have really understood a community that's very close because of some of the work that I've done, which is delightful to hear. And I mean, it's an honor, really, and to be sort of recognized by the Academy has been well, it's been a real ego boost, to be honest.
The way you said Academy, I can just imagine you saying that on stage. So best of luck there, yeah?
Thank you.
Antonio, how do you say Academy?
L'Académie, do you mean in French or in English? Accademia in Italian.
Okay. So wait. Before we get into it, really into it, this is something that's quite unique to the format of Synchronicity. So what we do here is we're working with musicians, as in performance musicians. This is the first time that I'm actually just with a composer, Antonio. I won't ask you to perform today, that's fine. And indeed, the first costume designer we've ever had on the show. But usually what we do is we get a live recording of a band or a musician, and I have a fantastic artistic relationship with a few dancers. One in particular, Eliza Cooper, who is a wonderful filmmaker and choreographer. And she's actually taken some of your music from Unorthodox, Antonio, and made a little movie out of it. So I'm going to, and obviously you haven't seen this yet, nor has Justine.
No.
I've only seen it once. So I'm going to invite them over. Yeah, I'm going to invite Eliza, who is the choreographer of what we're about to see, which is like a almost 10-minute video. And I'm also going to invite one of the dancers, Ali, over. Come on down. Awesome.
Oh, wow, people actually in the same room.
Yeah, we're actually.
Wow.
Do you want to just move?
Very novel for 2020.
Yeah, everyone, yes. So don't forget to post your questions in the chat. Now, Eliza, obviously, you saw Unorthodox before this whole
when it
idea
came out. As soon as it came out.
Yeah. And what excited you when you first watched it?
I was super excited to watch it because I am very interested in the Jewish community and have been studying Hebrew and Jewish culture and lived in Israel briefly. And I was really excited for the series. It looked fantastic. And watched it and loved it and thought it was a great, very specific story, but also a very universal story as well. I think
Very much so.
It's got this very specific community and detail, but also more generally, everyone feels something when they watch it, I think. Yeah.
Indeed. So, I mean, you took the music that was purposed for something completely different to this.
It's quite nerve-wracking, actually.
I'm sure. And Antonio, just be full of compliments afterwards, please. We're not interested.
How could I not be? So flattering. I'm sure it'll be amazing.
Well, I mean, I've seen it, and it's touching and very moving.
Beautiful.
Why don't we just at home? I think we should just play it.
Let's do it.
So what you're about to see, I'll just reiterate, is Antonio Gambale's music, a few of those cues that he wrote specifically for Unorthodox. And Eliza has taken that music and along with Ali and other dancers have choreographed and filmed films, like dance movies. So is everyone ready?
In 1 week.
In one week! Of course. I forgot to mention that she did get the material, a week ago?
Saturday night.
On Saturday night. And it was your birthday this week as well. So
sounds like our deadlines, actually. So well done.
Doesn't it? Okay, so it takes a bit of, it's a bit touchy here. So I'm going to share screen. Is everyone ready? Can I just hear from the chat? It's good, Bianca. Thank you for your question. We will get to that. That's really great. But is everyone ready? Is anyone ready for this moment? Yes, Ben Adler's ready. Here we go. Incredible.
Beautiful. Well done. Really appreciate the fact that you took into account the modesty clothing as well. Well done.
That was amazing. I can't believe you did that in 1 week.
Oh, yay! They liked it.
Really incredible work.
Wonderful.
It's always so lovely to see how people interpret your work in different ways. And there's so many lovely references back to the show as well. Like in the water, like the Wannsee lake scene, which is one of the most beautiful scenes in the series. So really well done. It's fantastic. I'd love to see if you can send me that later, because I don't know about you, Justine, but because we were seeing the live transmission, it was a bit staggered.
It's
it was a bit
free flowing
It'll be
movement.
Yeah, it will be actually. It's a good point that you're making. So this will all be up on the Dunera site as part of the interview. We'll have the separate as well, so that'll be up there.
great.
Want to see, but we'll send you a copy as well. I'm sure.
Yes.
You know, you never know where this sort of thing can lead. So just in a couple of minutes, just about your working relationship together, because you've known each other for quite a while. Yeah.
Yes. Ali is one of my main collaborators and has been for, we met 4 years ago, but since then we've always been working together.
It's been great. Yeah, we studied together and now we just make work together.
Yeah, some films and some live stuff.
Gorgeous.
Sometimes it's totally improvised, but that's fun too. Yeah.
That's what I was realizing. Something that I should probably say is that I directed the film, I guess, but what happened was we would go to a location and they would improvise. Like I would give them some ideas to go with, or just things that are interesting them in at the moment, but they're all strong improvisers. That's what the 4 dancers are all strong in and have trained in. And so my choreographic process in this is post production. You know what I mean? It's like I choreograph it afterwards to the music after they've done it. So they
I see.
heard it, you know, and some of them they'd heard it in the show, but they didn't necessarily know which music they were dancing to, and that's when the choreography happened. It's all their improvisation.
So that's part of what Synchronicity and Dunera are about, is giving a voice and to young artists as well as kind of established people. Now those dancers, obviously Ali Graham, Emma Grill, Jasmine Lancaster, and Jada Narkle, all obviously friends of yours to some degree.
Yes, all friends of mine, and also all Jada is currently studying, but the rest of us studied at Sydney Dance Company in the program, which is very focused on improvisation and collaborative work and multidisciplinary stuff.
I've got someone at home just saying to turn the microphone up, which I am doing now, and to when you speak. Now, I may add that this is best viewed like Justine with her headphones in. So if anyone at home, wants some really good sound, just plug in. I understand a lot of people out there are actually sitting around the table together as families or whatever. But now let's get into the nuts and bolts, the meat of what this whole interview is about, which is Unorthodox, and what it was like working on it with characters such as Esty and Yankee, and working in your fields, which you are, by now very experienced in. You've had a lot of success. Antonio, why don't you just answer? We had a question just before. I will just read it out. It was a great question. So would love to know about your thought process for scoring Unorthodox. What was important to do and what was important not to do?
Okay, that's a great question. And that was one of the very fundamental things that we started off with, actually. In fact, even before I started working on the show, when they were interviewing composers for the gig, one very clear point that was made by everyone, the director, the creators, the script writers, the whole team, was that they didn't want the score to have really anything to do with the Orthodox Jewish kind of aesthetic, nor too much to do with the Berlin setting. It had to be something of its own, because what it's like with cliches, with stereotypes. It's sort of there was no point doing that for a start, because there's so much real, very carefully chosen Yiddish music in the show itself. Excuse me, in the wedding, for example, all of this is like very carefully selected. Eli Rosen, who plays one of the characters in the show, is actually from the Satmar community himself, and he was a cultural consultant on the show, so he helped them really choose the right pre-recorded music.
Yeah.
Well, so the score really had to be its own thing, and so it had to be really about the characters, but it also had to fit sonically into that world, you know. So my challenge was more about finding the right dimension, like not making it too big or too small, and really seeing how I could heighten and universalize as well the stories of the characters. Because one other very important thing, which you'd know right from the opening titles, which is not, I mean, you can imagine a show like this could have had a blaring klezmer opening title. I mean, why not?
But of course, they would have gotten me to score that, not you. And so,
yes, of course. And I would have said no. Like I wouldn't have felt that it was my place to do that work because I don't know that music enough. But that's not what we wanted. We wanted it to be a show that people didn't sort of flip through and think, oh, that seems interesting, but I'm not super interested in heavily religious themed things, so I watch it. And it really did work because so many people, like especially my female friends, really from any kind of cultures. I mean, I'm Italian as well as Australian, and so my friends from university in Italy and cousins were sending me emails saying, you know, I have been Esti in my life. You know, I have been this person who has felt like other people are deciding what I can and can't do, you know.
So it really was the music that brought out our empathy for Etsy, for example. That was part of it.
Yeah, and her strength as well. That was the real balancing act for her particular theme, which we had in the beautiful choreography we just saw. Her theme was throughout that. And it was really, and you might have noticed as well, there's a lot of very kind of scrapey sounds and weird sort of noisy, kind of imperfect, out of tune or hissing synthesizers. I did that intentionally because a recording artist friend of mine once told me this beautiful term, which she called beautiful noise, you know, like this idea of the sort of imperfections in sound that your instinct is to sort of get rid of them and improve them and retune things and clean them up. I didn't want to do that as an aesthetic choice because it just played so beautifully against this person who, like all of them actually, you know, none of the characters are without flaws, you know, and they're all ultimately trying to do the best by what they believe in and have something that's holding them back. And so with Esti, it felt really good to have these sort of sounds that were on the one hand, underlining and amplifying her sense of perhaps impotence and weakness that she was trying to fight against. But then also her main theme is really strong. Like it's like a powerful. What I did for that was using layers of cello, violin, and viola that I pre-sampled, and I had them played with absolutely no vibrato. And again, this is a thing that came from the discussions we had about avoiding cliches, because as you know, in a lot of Jewish music, you know, the extremely expressive violin with vibrato, you know, that's such a feature, you know. And I thought, well, let's use these instruments, but let's just make them as flat, you know, just resonating. And when I played that theme, for example, when she walks into the water, that famous scene, and she takes her wig off, there's like a icy determination that comes through that. So on the one hand, you've got this hesitant, sort of timid side to her, and then this other side, which is like this raw, uncontrolled need and emotion that just comes out. And so that was the kind of work that I had to do.
Amazing, and you really mapped that out so well, so naturally. I mean, you hardly notice the music at times. Obviously, that's
which is good.
Yeah. You know, what did you think of the music? I've got no idea. Well, I had to watch it again to remember it. And, you know, that's something that's not an insult to a screen composer necessarily.
Definitely not.
And now you really followed that emotional journey. And obviously so did the costume. The wardrobe was just so important in following that emotional journey from Williamsburg to, you know, obviously the freedom of Berlin, her Etsy coming out of her shell. Now, maybe you can just give us a little bit of insight going from the, you know, the epitome, the real trapped feeling that Etsy feels at the wedding, for example, all the way to Berlin, Justine. I mean, it was genius what you did. I can't believe how realistic it is. And everyone on here, there is no doubt that every single person that's watching tonight have seen the series, stood back in awe as they watched. The costume was incredible. So well done. And maybe lead us through some of the research and some of, your relationship with the director, maybe as to, how it would play a part in the emotional journey of the characters and the whole series.
Well, thank you. That was so beautifully said, Ilan. Thank you. Look,
Yabba, dabba, dabba.
Sorry?
I said yabba dabba dabba dabba. Over to you.
When you start a show like this, of course, and you're trespassing in a world that you've never been in before, the most important thing is to find the nuances within that community. So the first step for us and the heads of department, unfortunately, not Antonio, we actually went to Williamsburg and we spent a week on the ground with Ellie Rosen, who was our cultural advisor and our Satmar expert, because he had grown up within that community. So we walked through the community and we were taken through actually by other ex-Satmar people. So we had a female person who was with us, which was really brilliant. And she told us lots about the history and the rules that they adhere to. And I asked loads of questions, of course, about the length of the skirts and why some people wear wigs and why some people wear this headscarves, and then why, at what point does that change? And I mean, there's so many different stories, and it all really depends on how pious you are, how close to God you feel that you need to be. So it was a fascinating journey, and I took loads of photographs. A few people on the street were not welcoming to us, but a few people actually really were. And those women that were sort of welcoming, like, oh, what are you doing in our community? I jumped on them and asked them as many questions as I could, very subtly.
I would have loved that.
Not everybody loved it. It is a very private world. There were a couple. I think there was one woman who actually really loved it and was very open and fascinated by Germans on the street, and then me. And of course we all stand out like sore thumbs because I'm quite a tall woman and look like that, and everyone else is in what you could really call a sort of a uniform. And as I watched it and I observed, I wanted to make sure that I didn't make it a uniform. I really wanted to find, exactly as Antonio was saying, I wanted to find the beauty within the clothing. And so I wanted to celebrate the uniqueness of each character and just make sure that the Malki character and the Miriam character were very different within the community, but also really supported their personality. So, for instance, Miriam she's a very strong woman. She obviously comes from a family that's got a bit more money than the other family. And she's the matriarch, and I wanted to dress her in a slightly more austere way, and she was very structured and everything fit perfectly, and she was really well put together, whereas Malki was much more sort of bubbly and nervous, and her mother wasn't well, and Esti was just a problem. And so I put lots of ruffles, and I did it in a subtle manner, but also sticking within the community's guidelines of modesty and not being over the top. So that learning about the community gave me a base to jump off and design the characters from, which was fantastic. And then the transition for Esti. So when we first meet her, she's young and she's insecure and feeling like a fish out of water. But then the marriage proposal is in the works, and she suddenly gets confidence. So I started to do in a very subtle way, just bring in slightly more stronger colors and prettier things for her. And then, of course, when she meets her husband for the first time, or her husband-to-be, I should say, and she wears quite a bold sort of pumpkin color dress, and I put the modesty collar on underneath, which is very common for that community to buy regular clothes and then add pieces that are just little tiny pieces that they tie on or put on underneath. So they have all these fake collars So I made a very pretty one for her to meet him, and she was very demure and sweet. And even though her character, and within that scene, she says, "I'm different," I wanted her to be playing the part of what her community expected of her. And then moving on to the wedding dress, that was, of course, a huge challenge because wedding dresses are very expensive, and to find a modest wedding dress is, I mean, most women just want to show everything off on their wedding day. So I really had to hunt for that. And I couldn't afford to make it, and I couldn't afford really to buy a new one. So I went on eBay and just...
Because people, of course, figure that you've just got this ultimate budget for a Netflix series and all, but you were working within a budget, as with everything. And this specifically, how much was the wedding dress?
Well, I mean, the thing is that Netflix has all, I'm just going to do a little backstory here. Netflix has different, I will tell you, they have different budgets for their international Netflix, like the Messiah show that I did a couple of years ago. That was an enormous budget, and I've never worked with so much money in my life. It's been amazing. But I did have 15,000 extras in that show that we dressed from head to toe. So you can understand you need a huge budget for that. And I had 320 cast members that of course have many changes, so it was huge. Whereas in this show we had maybe 500 extras, and actually I can't remember how many cast we had, less than 100. So the wedding dress needed to have all the design elements in it, which was to have pearls on it, because that's a status symbol within the community. It needed for me to be really restrictive so that it could communicate what she was stepping into, and she wasn't going to find her freedom in that relationship. But it also needed to feed her story of the princess for the day, stepping out of childhood into womanhood and starting God's work. And God's work is to rebuild the Satmar community.
Having children, of course, and keeping the family going.
Well, also actually to rebuild and repopulate the 6 million Jews that were killed during the Holocaust. Yeah. So that's one of their goals. And so the cost of the dress was 380 euros. And our darling Shira Haas is a very, very tiny woman. She's only about 5 foot, and she's really very petitely proportioned. So the dress was not. And I bought it from a Turkish woman because we were all in Berlin, and of course there's nothing Jewish left in Berlin, so I had to lean on the Islamic community.
Right, which you went to the Turkish community. I read that was very interesting.
Yeah, because they have a very similar dress code, and even though it's oil and water within those communities, for me I could tread that line because I don't have
so okay, what we usually do now is have a little interval and we play a little musical piece to kind of... And do you guys mind going 10 minutes over, the hour? Is that okay for you guys? I don't know what you guys have planned for the day. Is that all right, Antonio and Justine? We've got questions coming in and stuff. So because it's going so swimmingly that I would love to keep it going.
Okay.
So if you guys don't mind getting up, and I'll invite Eddie over. Eddie Bronson, come on over. No, come on, sit here. Yeah, come on. So Eddie and I have been working together on music for many, many, many years. He actually spent time in some of the Chabad communities, and he taught me loads of traditional niguns, they're called, and traditional songs. I'll just get this up here. Now, we are about to go into a period of the high holidays here, as everyone just about would be aware of. And this is a particular song that's sung, in fact, I'm just going to go and get a hat actually while I do this. I'm sure it'll be well appreciated, and I'll get, doesn't matter what sort of hat it is. No, my father's saying no, get rid of it, but I want to come on my Mexican hat, so what? Okay.
Should we turn our mics off while you're singing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you like.
Okay.
And ladies and gentlemen, in fact, I'm going to turn this down because it tends to get a little loud. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so this is a Chabad version of Ovinu Malkeinu. We're just going to play it. And again, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Eddie Bronson, our one and only, back. It's not usually clapped for. Everyone usually goes, ah, and they go in for more praying, and they're going for more praying. Thank you, Eddie. I'm going to ask Eddie back in a minute, but how did you enjoy that? That's obviously, Antonio, you've heard quite a bit of Ashkenazi type Chabadnik music maybe along the way, or
Sure,
I would imagine that it wasn't really that important for you to be aware of stylistically, you know, where you were writing for. It was more part of an emotional journey, yeah? Or
Yeah,
did you
part of
study
the aesthetic that I was playing up against, I think, if anything. And I mean, one thing that's interesting that I pick up on from what Justine was just saying about learning about the culture and the community, I think a lot of people would be surprised. I mean, I myself was surprised, you know, from a non-Jewish perspective. Many people might think that Jewish people in general all know about the Orthodox community, this very specific groups like the Satmar. And you know, many of the people who made this show obviously go right back to Deborah Feldman, who obviously does know about it because she's she wrote the book. But, you know, our showrunner and co-creators who wrote the script together, but they're Jewish, you know, many of the people in the production were. And they were learning tons too, you know, and I think a lot of people's assumption would be, oh, you all know that stuff. But I mean, it's in a similar way that someone who casually identifies as Christian in some way doesn't necessarily know how deep the rabbit hole goes on certain evangelical groups or that kind of thing, you know. And so that was an interesting thing to be reminded of.
Music is not only your score, Antonio. I'm very curious as to how you worked with the other music. Some of it diegetic, which for people at home, it means music that's from the actual audio of the film, of what's going on
within the scene,
within the actual scene. But music also it represents the link between the generations. I remember a scene of the grandmother crying to opera at one point, remembering her father. And so it was this, and it was, is that right? I think at some point, and it was like quite amazing that the grandmother's father, although probably religious, listened to non-religious music. And it was kind of like she was...
This is a really important script point, actually.
Please.
That they wrote into it for a very specific purpose. And I think maybe people didn't consciously click onto it, but I think everyone realized it, which was that part of what makes Esti in a way feel like, why am I in this box, is because she has this close relationship with her grandmother. She knows about what it was like before, what the life was in Europe before, how much more enrichment they had from that kind of thing. And so that is part of what seeds her questioning a little bit. But the other point about that is that it is a bridge, like you said, between her and the world in Berlin. Because when she goes there and meets the music students, and that she sort of pinned her hopes of transforming her life through this, one really crucial fact is that, you know, if you're coming from a very restricted kind of ideological community or whatever, I think a lot of what comes with that, good or for bad, is this demonizing. You know, not everyone in these communities are very philosophical. Some people just toe the line and believe, you know, and some people, you know, there might be a bit of a feeling that, well, the outside world is this, it's that, it's, you know, which we sort of see through the vices that Moishe has picked up. And because she had this connection with her grandmother and listened to Dvorak and things like that, there's this click, aha moment that happens when she's like, well, how bad can these people be if they love the same music that my grandmother loved, you know, and they're studying it and they want to do this, you know, that they can't be the devil incarnate, you know what I mean? So that was a really important point.
So again, like in the wedding ceremony, for example, there's no instruments, it's just vocal music. And, you know, I'm wondering, you know, whether there's something in that. I remember a cue that I really loved. I think it was when she first gets in episode 2, she first gets to Berlin, and I think it's Este's theme that's playing, but there's kind of like this improvising French horn thing going on underneath it, or something that might...
So when she's in the taxi going into Berlin?
Maybe it could have been the taxi, yeah. I just remember there's like, oh, is that diegetic music coming in?
Oh, I know what you mean. No, it's a different scene. It's when she's walking through the streets. I think it's actually a montage. It's a montage where we see her walking around Berlin, and then it cuts to Yankee walking around New York.
Yeah, that's
lost. That's actually really well spotted. That was actually something from Live Sound, where they were recording on set, and there was a cellist playing in the street. It's a cello. And I remember that because we had this discussion where I think even the director or someone from the, you know, came in and said, because they'd been using themes that I'd written while they were shooting, you know, because one thing about this show that was quite different to other things I've worked on is we didn't use any temp music, which you would know what it is, but maybe you want me to explain it briefly.
I'd love you to explain, because obviously you did this music, I'm sure it keys in, you did this, you wrote this music as everything was being made as well. So
yes. I mean, themes were written at least kind of while they were shooting, but then it was all reworked and developed later. But temp music is a technique used in almost ubiquitously in production nowadays, where
very dangerous.
Yeah, it's good and bad. I mean, the people tend to like to say it's the worst thing in the world, and there are a lot of bad things about it, because what it means is that when they start editing, the editors and the director will put in music from anything, like from another film, from another show, anything really, that they feel fits what they're working on. And they use it as a template to sort of help cut, to help get the timing, to help get a sense of what's there. Now, it can be good in the sense that some people who work with it try to be very focused with it. They'll edit the temp music they use a lot, and they won't bring things in from all over the place, and they'll try to be quite concise, and it can work as a shorthand for telling the composer, well, this is the kind of thing we want. But in this show, we didn't use it at all, because Anna Winger, our showrunner, from the very beginning said, I hate temp music. I hate how everyone gets so used to what's there already, and then you fight with the composer for no reason because you're already accustomed to what's there. You know, it's a waste of time. So we didn't do that. So I wrote a lot of themes first, and they were putting them in as temp music while they were editing. And there was a happy accident that it happened to be in the same key, or at least in a complementary key to what this street busker was playing.
It's crazy.
And I remember a message coming down the line saying, oh, because I think I might have, when I reworked that scene, I might have changed the key. And because I wasn't listening, I was listening to the dialogue, but I didn't have that sound in my, in the version that I was working to. And someone said, no, you have to use the old one. And I was like, oh, why do I have to use the old one? And then they explained, oh, it's just there's this really beautiful coincidence that happens. So,
I think people like Orson Welles have built their careers on beautiful mistakes, and that indeed.
Yeah, it was a really lovely coincidence that happened. So yeah, and it also allowed us to add in a tiny bit of a sort of Yiddish flash in the music without it with it being genuine in a sense, you know.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I'm glad I've kind of
Well spotted.
little tricky little bits that you did unintentionally as well. So the two worlds are obviously split. Justine, you haven't told you how you dressed all those Berlin clubbers, something which I'm sure you've had a lot more experience with than delving into Williamsburg.
Yes, true.
About your old club days. No, don't do that. Just
We went out every night in Berlin while we were working.
But one thing we all noticed, of course, was Esti's poitrine. Esti's poitrine seems to reveal itself more and more throughout as she takes the wig off, so do her clothes reveal more and more skin, etc. But there's a pretty saucy club scene, and there's a lot going on there. Tell us a bit about the club scene, how you dress, 300 clubbers. Do they come wearing their own stuff and do you just adjust, or do you have, a lot figured out?
Well, I mean, that's a really great question. So Berlin is a club town, but the thing is that each club has almost a different theme, and people dress very specifically according to the music that they want to listen to. So, and there's lots of crazy wild clubs where people wear very little clothing and lots of other things go on other than dancing. So I had to find...
please tell us all at home exactly what you mean by that, Justine. We just started. We've got hours.
Everyone can just think about that quietly. So for me, it was really important to try and find a happy medium so when actual Berliners watched the show, they weren't like, oh, I've never been to a club that looked like that, but also to not make it look too outrageous to people who had not been to a Berlin nightclub. So I really needed to find a common thread. And what I did was on Sunday afternoon...
Like a common thread? Is that something that you say all the time?
Yes, it is. Shush. Stop picking up on my...
It's Father's Day and you're making dad jokes. I love it. Please.
So on Sunday afternoon, there is like a market down one of the streets that I live very close to, where lots of people who just don't earn very much money and also live a life of clubbing will go and resell. They'll sell their clothing very cheaply so that they can afford to buy new clothes, so they can then go to a club and wear it and la la la. So I had these nana trolleys, as I called them, which are just like these really ugly shopping trolleys. And I had two of them, and I'd start at the beginning of the market every Sunday on my own, not on paycheck or anything, just my own time, because this was the only place I could find really authentic Berlin German clothing. Well, I would go down.
Yeah, sorry. Continue. I was going to say that goes to say just how committed you guys are to your craft, and what you'll do. You'll go, that extra mile. Sorry, go on.
Exactly. So I would walk down this street every Sunday, and I would just pick the eyes out of what I could find, just anything interesting. And I would would bring it to work. Of course, everything would be washed, and then we'd have racks and racks of club clothing and racks of whatever other extra clothing we needed. But I had to do it secondhand because I had this European budget. And so all of Garcia's clothing, that net top and that really cool kind of 80s bra she has on, and then these high-waisted black pants, that whole outfit probably cost me 10 euros.
Which street market? We've got a question here from Bianca. Which street market exactly?
It's a continuation of a street called Planufer. It's in Kreuzberg on it's not the Spree, it's the other canal. Okay. That wasn't much help, was it? Near Cottbusser Dam.
Okay, great. Listen, we are going to start wrapping up. We've had a few questions. One of them, of course, which is really interesting, is what are you guys up to at the moment? Over to you, Antonio. What's next? Like, what are you composing for, or what's your plan over the next, a month or so?
Well, I mean, it's a great question, because the world has been a little bit upturned since the show came out. So for now, I mean, I've been working, I think it's similar with Justine. We had projects that were already underway. And I think in my case, I'm lucky because I was working on 2 films that were already in post-production. before the COVID disaster, basically. So that I'm just finishing one of them now. They're French films, and we're starting to pick up on a few new things now. So I've been reading scripts. It's interesting because, you know, I'm hearing from a lot of people that are starting to present things to work on that they're going to be able to start shooting again soon. I'm not really sure how that works, especially in the US. I've heard that a lot of them are going to Vancouver, to start shooting.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really dependent on the production cycle.
Tricky times, and I guess, yeah. And how's Paris? Tu parles français, c'est ça, Antonio?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've been here nearly 20 years. So, Paris. I mean, we had a very severe lockdown quite early on, similar to Berlin, perhaps maybe even more intense. You know, it's not the French. You know, the French are the French. I mean, it's just been the summer holidays here, and people still did go away, and people are just back now.
Je vais faire ça, je vais faire ci, je m'en fous.
Yeah, pretty much. Although now we do have a obligatory masks outside. Before it was just inside, you know, and now you get fined if you're not wearing one.
Typical of that is the fact that the French were the last to stop smoking in private spaces, yeah?
You'd think, except that I think the Berliners actually beat us, because there are still places in Berlin where you can go inside and there are people smoking, even though it's against European laws.
Justine, what's happening now that you're in Sicily? You're just going to forget everything and stay there for the next 6 months or so?
No, I've actually been in Berlin. I was in Mexico for 5 months working on a big Apple TV show called Mosquito Coast with Justin Theroux as our star, and actually Melissa George, an Australian actress. And we got closed down in March, and so I went to Berlin to be with my daughter and my grandson. And I've been there. So it's just starting to open up again, and looks like we might be able to go back down to Mexico and finish it. But also because I'm not sure, I have been looking at other projects, other things have been coming in. So I'll just wait and see what actually really comes to fruition first, and then make a decision.
Well, best of luck. And look, on behalf of Dunera, we are a non-profit, fabulous organization that brings culture to all ages, but especially those, I guess, more vulnerable in the community, more sophisticated, more mature is the way I like to put it. And, you know, like, we're at it all week trying to get content for you guys. And I'm sure you'll all agree at home that this has been really a fascinating conversation of discovery and artistic endeavor. Especially, you know, Justine and Antonio, but also our dancers and our choreographer, which I'm going to invite back into screen. And Eddie, if you'd like to come a bit closer, I want Eddie next to us, and perhaps come on over. We're going to end with a song which was made famous by Audrey Hepburn, written by Henry Mancini. Henry Mancini? Am I losing my mind? Yeah, good. In Breakfast at Tiffany's, Moon River, which is one of our favorites. Again, there were questions that we didn't have time to answer, but it's been so wonderful, you know, having everyone on board. Our love goes out especially to Melbourne, because they've been in lockdown. I'm not sure if you guys were aware over in Europe, but Melbourne has been in stage 4 for ages, and I think they've gone to 3.5 or something. I've got no idea. May you all be clubbing in Berlin as soon as possible, and all the like. And
thanks for having us. It was a pleasure.
I hope so. Thanks a lot. And look, we're just getting so many gorgeous messages from everyone. Have a lovely, lovely rest of the weekend, everyone. And bless you all. Thanks, Justine.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Lovely to see you all, and well done, you lovely dancers. Keep up the good work.
Yes, well done. Congratulations.
Oh, river wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style someday. Oh, dream maker, you hide spirit breaker. Wherever you are going, I'm going your way. Two drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. Where after the same rainbows end, waiting round the bend, my huckleberry friend, Moon River and me. Two drifters off to see the world. There's such a lot of world to see. Where after the same rainbows end, waiting round the bend, huckleberry friend, Moon River and me. See you, everyone. Have a beautiful week.